All
Okay.
right. So we're live at the moment.
Yay!
Yeah. So I just got to see how my screen is looking. So I'm sharing screen. Can you read the icons?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
And okay, so we got. All right. We're just testing the system here to make sure everything's working. We're going to be designing a project, and I'll walk you through this whole design. All right, now we're just double checking. They have 3 people on, so Adam must be 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, whoever's, I got several people on. Okay. All right. So first of all, I need to know how my screen is looking to people. Is the screen clear? Can you see things clearly, like the icons and such on the screen at the moment for the Vectric software? Put in the comments, please, and then we'll get started. Because what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through the design of this project. It's a fairly complex project. It takes quite a bit of thought, so you're going to learn a lot of different tools in the Vectric software of how to make things work. We're going to work with scaling, offset. We're going to do drive rails, which is very exciting. Lettering, doing all kinds of stuff. So this is a game card holder for my niece Isabel, who only can use one hand. So let's see what kind of comments we got. Looks good to Robert. Joe, hey Joe. Okay. All right, cool.
Yep.
Right,
All right,
so
I'm gonna bump me, Garrett, and that way I can
yep.
get back to orders.
All right, thank you. Yeah, folks,
Yep.
we are working on orders. Okay. All right. All right, so Julianne, you don't have to stay online. You can keep it running in case I text you and say, Julianne's come save me. Okay, CNC brothers and sisters, hello. It's Friday, and we are going to walk through a design. And the design I'm going to walk through today, by the way, I'm Garrett with IDC Woodcraft, the company you get your CNC router bits from. I've been working on a project for a while. I want to make a video out of it, and I figure why not do it live? Because the video editing can take some time and I can answer some questions as I move along. So it's going to be a really interesting design that we're doing here. And we're not going to have a lot of people on board since it's kind of an impromptu live, but it'll be a good video for you and running future because you're just going to learn a bunch of stuff. So Daryl, hey, what's going on? You've been trying to get ahead of me. Something. Okay, so all right, let's here's what we're going to design. I am going to design this project right here. And this is a card holder for my niece Isabel, and we are going to work with 3D models. We're going to work with offsets to make these little slots here, and to take a rectangle and turn it into the outer shape. I'm going to make the lettering there. It doesn't look so good here on the image, but it does. It will come out fine. And I'm going to teach you about drive rails in a way to make this interesting pocket shape, something that you will find in the Vectric software. It'll be in your VCarve and Aspire version of your software. So, and I'm going to explain everything as I go along. We're going to get into depth in this, and then every once in a while I'll stop and I'll check on questions, see what kind of questions you have. So this is gonna be kind of cool. I enjoy this project. Putting it together has taken a lot of thought. All right, so let's rock and roll. First of all, that card holder is 17 inches wide by about 8 inches tall. I'm going to make it out of this piece of ash right here. Now, I surfaced this piece of ash on my alt mill with the ultra smooth cutting surfacing bit from IDC Woodcraft. I needed to get this to a specific thickness, and I didn't know what the thickness would be until I was done, so I could set up my design around it. And we are taking the calipers, and it is really, it's 0.85 thick on average all the way around, very close throughout the entire project. That's why you need calipers, because you need to be able to set things up like that. So I am going to be launching Vectric here. So I need it right here. We're going to start the project, and this is going to be a lot of fun. So let me start the screen share. And Julianne, do me a favor real quick. Just take my picture out of the screen so this is full screen. All right. Thank you. All right. Julianne's in the background. She's not going to really be commenting. She's doing shipping, but she is monitoring as we move along. Okay, so let's get into the Vectric software. I've got it launched right here. We are going to start on this project. So VCarve Pro version 12 is what I am using. And I will turn this into a regular video afterwards. So we're going to create a new file, and we're going to set up the project size. So it's already set up here, but it's 24 inches wide, 9¼ inches tall, and it's 0.85 thick. We're setting up as a single-sided job. I'm setting my Z0 position at the machine bed because I know the specific thickness of the project, and it's just where I want to work this off of. Now, my XY datum is set to the back left corner. I want to set it to the middle for this project to start off with. And when I'm done, after the toolpaths are done, I'll change my origin to the back left corner again. And we're going to click OK, and that project is created. So the first thing that we need to do is to create the basic shape of this project here. I'm going to flip this over to the top. And when you're designing a CNC project, you can, depending on the project itself, you either want to design from the outside in. Most of the time you want to do that because you have a limited size as far as your material size, right? So we've got a 24-inch wide project. So I'm going to build from the outside in. And the first thing I'm going to do is create the profile of this project on the blank piece of material. So you notice that this project has a rounded top and all the corners are radiused. So one of the things to know about when you're doing a project like this, that you would start off with the basic shape. So technically the basic shape of this project is a rectangle. And so that's what we're going to start off with. So I know the width and the height of this. So I'm going to go into the create vectors, draw a rectangle. And in the rectangle, I want my anchor point to be set at the middle of that little square. And I want the rectangle to be built out from the center of the material, or where my crosshairs are in the center of this. That's my origin point. So in order to set the origin point, you set your X to 0 and your Y to 0. We're going to make our corner type square and then set the width, which is 17, and the height of the project, which we will make 7.5. And I'm going to make it 8 instead. All right. So, and then we'll create. And so because I picked the center to build the rectangle out from the center, and I told it that the start point was X, Y, 0, it's put the center of the rectangle right there at the origin point. We're going to close that, and now I've got to create that shape, that arc that's going across the top of this. So we're going to use a large circle, and so I'm going to zoom out, and I use my mouse to just zoom out there, and I'm going to go into the circle command. Now with this setup, one of the things we want to definitely make sure we have turned on our snaps. So the snapping function enables us to the cursor to snap to certain locations. And so the snap features are these up in the upper right corner. It is these first two icons that I am hovering my mouse over, and they want you need them to be blue. If you click on one of them, it'll turn gray. That means it's turned off. You click it again, it turns blue, it's turned on. We want that on. And so now to create this arc, I'm going to draw a very big circle. So we're going to come over to create vectors, select circle, and I'm not going to worry about any of the settings in the circle. I'm simply going to come down below the project somewhere, and I'm going to let my cursor snap to the middle line. So if you look at the cursor right now, there's a little circle over the cursor. That means I am in circle command. There's a little plus just to the left and underneath the circle. That's where the center of the cursor is. And then you have the X and Y coordinates where the cursor is currently located. As I move over to that center line, you'll see the center line will turn into a dash and my cursor changes to a round target. And that means it's just grabbing that line and snapping to that line. That's exactly what I want. I'm going to hold my left mouse button down and just drag up this big circle. And we're just going to move it to there. And you can see I'm just a little low of the sign. So now I got this big arc there that I can create. What I want to do with that circle is I'm going to leave it right there. Okay, now one of the things I want to do is we're going to close the circle command and we're going to draw a line that we are going to use later on from the center of the circle outward to anywhere. So I'm going to go into create vectors, grab a polyline. Now, this line is going to be used for construction purposes. It's going to set us up to do some things. So that's why we're using a line. So I'm just going to go into the line mode, and I'm going to hover over the circle for just a moment. What's happening with that is Vectric is saying, oh, you're going to reference the circle when you start this line. So Vectric now says, okay, we got the circle reference. Now I'm going to come over, and if my cursor turns into a target with a dot. And what that means is it has now picked the center of the circle. If I hold my left mouse button down and let it go, my line is now started from there. And I want that line just to come up like this. You'll understand what this line is for later on. This is kind of one of those things that takes a lot of forethought when you're creating a project. So I've modeled this thing multiple times in order to remember some of these things. I got that line. I'm just going to hit the escape to get out of the line function. And now I need to get rid of the rest of the circle. So we're going to go to the trim command and trim out this part of the circle that's outside that rectangle that we just drew. So we're going to come over to under edit objects. There's a little pair of scissors there. We want to click the scissors. And we want to make sure the little check box in the bottom is checked of the scissors menu, of the trim menu. What that check does is when we trim, it will allow things to rejoin as we trim. It'll allow lines to rejoin. So now I'm going to come over. I'm going to trim this line right here outside the rectangle. And then I want to trim it on the other side. It's going to get rid of the rest of the circle. There we go. That's all I needed to do. We're going to close the trim function. So now in order to get this type of shape up here, we need to trim away the top of the rectangle. But we don't want to do that yet because I've got these card slots, and you can see that the arcs of the card slots match the arc of the top of the project. And so what I want to do is I want to do an offset of the top arc so that I can start these card slots, and then I can trim out the rest of the project for the outside for the basic shape, and we'll get the radiuses put on. So going back into the project, we're going to use the offset command. So we're going to select that arc right there, and then come over to offset and layout. We're going to select the first icon. When you hover over it, it says offset selected vectors. Go into that function, and we're going to offset inwards left. And basically what that's going to do is it's going to copy the circles, the circle inside of the current circle at a certain distance that we suggest or that we tell it to. So what I want to do is I want to copy that circle inside by 1 inch. And then I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again because I need to get the 3 slots that we have here. So in order to make this really fast, first of all, we need to set our distance for the offset. And right now it's set to 1 inch, which is exactly what I want. The thing I want to do here is click this little checkbox that's at the bottom where it says select new. And I'm going to show you what that does. I'm going to unclick that checkbox. And we want to make sure the other checkboxes are not clicked. And I'm going to click the button offset, and you're going to see the dotted line is going to copy. And so I click it, and there we got the copy, but the original is still selected. What I want to do, since I want to copy multiple times inside, I want to have this checkbox checked so that when it makes the new copy, it's going to automatically select the new copy. So I'm going to click Control Z. Control Z will undo the last move. We're going to click the checkbox, select new. And now I'm going to click offset while this arc is highlighted. And now it created a new copy, and you can see that one is now selected and the original is not selected. I'm going to click it again and again. And now I've got my 3 basic card slots set up. So we're going to close that. And what I need to do now is set the card slot thickness using the offset command again. I'm going to come back over to this. These card slots are 1/4 of an inch wide, and they're going to be about 1/2 of an inch deep, but the depth gets set up in the toolpath. So all I need to do is offset these lines again by 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to go back to this one, and since this is 1/4 of an inch offset, now I'm going to select the top one. We're going to go back into the offset command and change my offset distance by 0.25. And now we're going to click offset, and it's going to create that offset arc by 1/4 of an inch right there. And then I'm going to do it for that one, and then I'm going to do it for that one. And now we have all 3 card slots, the basic, laid out. Now I have learned something on this because this is going to be a narrow slot and a piece of ash, and I'm going to be using a pocketing toolpath. So I may build up a clearing toolpath first. And by doing that, I need to create another offset line. And so what I'm going to do is select this upper offset there, and we're going to change that to half the distance of 0.125. And now you'll get this in a little bit. But I've now created this inside line in the first arc. I'm going to do that again in the second one, and I'm going to do it again in the third one. Now I want to explain to you a little bit more of why that's there. I'm going to use a 3/16 down cutting end mill to cut out this slot. And what I want to do is I actually want to do a profile in the middle first to clear out the material, and then I'll do another pocket toolpath that'll come in and it'll actually go around and actually clean up that toolpath. So, excuse me, running with a kind of a rough throat right now. So that is in place. We've matched that arc. The one next thing we've got is the arc of the parts pocket. So the card slots, and then this pocket is for the game pieces that we play. So we like to play a game called Catan, and Catan has lots of pieces, and Isabel needs to have that ability to hold her components as well. So we're going to create the arc on that, and then we can finish up the outer shape. So we're going to go back over to that. I'm going to grab this last arc at the bottom, and I'm going to offset that by 1 inch. So I'm setting my setting to 1 inch and click offset. And now we have the top of that, of the pocket. So we're going to close that. We got all our offsets set up. This is quite cool. And now it's time to get the outline taken care of. Now I'm going to stop for a second, go into the stream and see if we got some questions going on. And Daryl, you said you've been trying to get a hold of us. So I'm assuming you sent us an email. Anyway, We got 35 people on board. So hello, CNC brothers and sisters. We're going to get back into the design. And now I'm going to fix up the basic shape. So all I need to do now is get rid of this top corner of the rectangle. I'm going to go over to the trim function, and we are going to trim that. Now, this is where this little check box in the trim function, we definitely want to check, because we're going to trim away the top of this rectangle, and we want the top arc to rejoin the rectangle. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to click the upper arc, and you can see that it's its own vector. And then if I click the rectangle, it is its own vector. So here's how this is going to work and what's going to happen when we have this checked. I'm going to uncheck this box for a moment, and then I'm going to come up and I'm going to trim out the rectangle at the top, and I'm going to close it. And now if I click that arc, you can see the arc is still selected, but it didn't join with the rest of the rectangle. So I'm going to hit Control Z, and I'm going to go back into the scissors mode. I'm going to check that checkbox, and we're going to trim that top. Going to close it. Now when I click on the arc, the whole thing, whole outer boundary is selected. And what that means is it has created a single whole vector. Now we need to add our radius to it. So the radius tool, it's a fillet tool. It's very cool. It adds all kinds of cool accent to your projects. And that is under Edit Objects. Usually the third icon down in the front in the Vectric software, it's called a fillet. You select that, and you want to make sure that the button that you have selected for the various fillets is the very top. It's normal fillet, and the radius I'm going to make for this is 1 inch. So we're just going to set that up at the top to say 1. And all we have to do is come down to a corner and click. Now, if you look at my cursor at the moment, you're going to see a plus and a little arc there. This is a cool little tip I want to teach you. When I click the corner, I hover my cursor over the corner of that rectangle and click. Okay, we've created a radius. Now, if you look at my cursor, I still have that little arc over top the cursor, but once it touches the arc that was just created, that arc little drawing now turns into 2 lines. And what that's telling me, it's going to undo a radius. So if I click it again, that radius gets undone. And so I can click, make the radius, unclick, and undo the radius. But there is an issue there. If you're trying to create a radius around with an arc like what we have right here, I'm going to click this upper corner, and now we have the radius there. If I go to undo that, it's going to mess up the upper arc. I'm going to click that, and no, it didn't mess it up. Sometimes it'll turn that upper arc into a straight line. So anyway, I'm going to create that 1 inch radius there, 1 inch radius there, do it over all 4 corners, and there is the basic shape of the project. So I'm going to close that. So what we're doing right now is we're just constructing this up. Then we're going to drop it onto layers. We're going to get everything segmented out so we can work with it. And I do want to check on comments real quick. Hello, Andre. Okay, no other comments. Let's just keep on going. Now we need to add in our 3D models. We got this little lily thing there, and I guess this one is a magnolia. So we're going to drop these in, and I'm going to teach you how to scale these things and also set the heights of them so that we want to know the heights or set the heights of 3D models that is going to work with the rest of the project. So let's go back into that drawing. And when you have the VCarve software or the Aspire software, you can import the STL files or the 3D models into these projects. And you do that by the tabs all the way over at the side. Before we even go any further, we need to save the project, right? So Vectric does not do an auto save. And so you have to actually go and manually save it. Now, there's 3 ways you can do that. You can hit Control S on the keyboard, or you can come up to File at the top, click that, and click Save. Or you can, under File Operations, you can use the Save button that's in the File Operations. Now, if you've gotten the Vectric software and you do not see these 4 icons, one is this is the new, this is Save, this is Undo, this is Redo. Vectric has set it up in a way that, unfortunately, you need to turn these on. And the way you do that is go into Edit. At the top, click Edit, and down at the bottom it says Options. A window will pop up. You scroll down the window and scroll down to General Settings, and you'll look into the things under General Settings. It will say Show Additional File Operations. Yours would say No. You click into that to highlight the field, and then a little arrow will come up at the right of the field. Click that, and then you'll click Yes and click OK, and these icons will show up. So I'm going to save the file. I'm going to click Save, and we'll save this. I'm going to save this in my Downloads folder. I'm going to call this card holder and save that. Okay. So now periodically we need to save the project. Adding those cursors and that file operations will help you out quite a bit. All right. So let's go into our 3D models. So at the very left of your screen, you'll see some tabs, and one of them says Clip Art. Now, in some cases, you'll see some people who have these tabs at the bottom. In the version 11, 11.5, the tabs are at the bottom. In version 12, they put it at the side, but you can change it to the bottom. I leave it at the side because most people have it defaulted that way, and you have to get into the settings again and change that stuff. So we're going to click Clip Art, and you're going to generally have two options here. You're going to have one that says Clip Art and one that says Design and Make. So Design and Make is where files that you buy from the Vectric company get imported to if you get 3D models from there. But if you click the Clip Art one, it's going to open up a directory of all the different types of 3D models that come with your Vectric software. And then there's a, it tells the different types. We're going to go to Plants and Fruit. And I'm going to get this lily, and I'm going to drag it in, and then I'm going to scroll down and get the magnolia and drag that in as well. And we are done with that. So we're going to come back up to those tabs on the left, go all the way up to the design, click that, and now we are set up. And so now we've got our basic 3D models. The first thing we want to do is, obviously they're too big right now, so we want to scale them down. So this is a tool you're going to learn here, is how to scale your projects. So right now the magnolia is selected. And you come over to the area Transform Objects, and it's going to be the second icon in where it says Selected Object Size. You click that, and inside that you set this. You come into the Set Size menu, and you can leave the upper. There's two selections here. You just want to have the first selection selected. We're going to choose our anchor point to be at the center, and that what that means is when it adjusts the size of the 3D model, it will change it'll change from the middle of the model. If I had like the lower left corner selected, when it changes its size, it's going to shrink down towards the lower left corner. I want it to shrink towards the middle. Now down where it says the width and the height, that's the actual current width and height of this 3D model right now. Now I'm going to move this model for just a second. I want to bring it over here because I want to point out something. One of the things you will have seen using the Vectric software are the little handles that pop up when you select an item. You'll have the white handles, and then you'll have the blue handles on the four corners. The white handles are essentially bounding box. It's called a bounding box. It's the basically a box that Vectric plugs in that essentially the project, the element, whether it's a regular vector or a 3D model, it's what that fits into. So I just want to make sure you understand this bounding box concept. So that's one of the things that it explains. And this, when we go to the scaling factor here, where it says width, the width of our bounding box is 5.7037, and the height of it is 5.5328, I think, 5.576. Okay, I was way off on that one. So I'm going to drag this back in, and I'll hold my left mouse button down, and that's how I can move it. I'm just going to place it in there general, and I want to change that to about 4 inches. So we're going to go to the width, and I'm going to set it at 4. Now, what we want to do with the 3D model is we want to scale it in ratio from the width and the height. So when it changes size, it's going to change size. It'll stay in scale. And so we want this little checkbox checked that says link X, Y. And that means that if for whatever change we make in the width, it's going to compensate in the width and the height. So I'm going to change that number to 4. And when we watch the number in the height box, we will see that change as soon as I change that number. So I put in 4, and now the height box says 3.87. And I'm going to apply. Now, there's this little checkbox here. Before I hit apply, it says auto scale Z. And what that auto scaling does is when it scales the X and the Y, when that auto scale Z is checked, it's also going to scale the Z height or the thickness of the model itself. If you don't do the auto scale Z, then the thickness of the model will stay the same. And if you make it really small, it's going to be a really tall and thick model. So I'm going to have to grab myself a cough drop. I've been dealing with a bit of a cold. And I'm not seeing comments right now, but ask your questions. I'll pop back over in a second to check out some questions. So I have auto scale Z selected. I'm going to click apply, and it's going to change the size of that magnolia. I'm going to come over and click the lily and do the same thing. I want that to be 4 inches tall, and apply there too. And then I'm going to close that, and now we've changed the size of that. Now we can move the 3D models to where we want. We can double click it, and the cursor will turn into this kind of 4-way arrow. And then while it's a 4-way arrow, we can just hold our left mouse button and drag our 3D model over. Now I'm going to click this one, click it again so I get my arrow, and I'm going to put it in a general position. We'll refine those positions later. So I'm going to save the project again, and I'm going to go over and check for questions. Good. Okay, so no questions going on, as far as I tell. Julianne, every once in a while, just pop in and see if there's a question. You can start it. That'll help me find it quickly. Okay, so we're coming back to this. Oh, I wanted to see one thing here. All right, 34 people on board. So not that many, but again, it's impromptu, but don't worry. People are going to appreciate this. This file I will make available to you as well. It's going to be a really cool project, but it's quite a complex thought process to make this project. All right, now we're going to finish up making the core theme for the pocket of this, for the game pieces. So I'm going to go back here. All I'm going to do is create a rectangle. You go up to create vectors, and I'm simply going to come down here, and I'm just going to make a general rectangle. That's going to be inside the 3D elements. I'm going to click close, and the first thing I want to do is center up this rectangle. There's a couple ways I can center it. I can hover over the middle handle, and then hold my left mouse button down and just drag it over, and it's centered. Or we can use the centering tool under transform objects, which is the last one to the right where it says align selected object. And I can click into that, and I can center it left or right by clicking this button. I can center it up and down. And these buttons, it's centering it relative to the project material that I set up. So I just wanted left and right. We're closing that. Now I'm going to just bring this rectangle up so that it's touching this arc. So the rectangle is selected right now. And one of the cool little things that I love about the Vectric software is while it's selected, I'm going to hit the arrow keys on my keyboard and start to nudge the objects around, whatever selected object it is. And so now I have raised that rectangle up, and you can see it's crossing over this arc just a little bit. That's okay. I can also use the move command. Under transform objects, there is the first icon. You can select that, or you can just hit M on the keyboard, and M will open up the move command structure. And so that has done that. I can select the rectangle. I can grab this top corner, and because my snaps are turned on, when I hold my left mouse button down, I can grab that corner and I can move it down to where the rectangle and the arc intersect, and that will put that rectangle right on that arc. But one of the things I have learned from this is when I do that and then I go to try to trim, sometimes the other side doesn't quite touch, and so it won't trim it properly. So I generally don't like to use the move command when I know I'm going to be trimming after I've moved something. Particularly if I'm counting on an element when I move it to snap to certain locations. So we're just going to close that. We're going to get the scissors out, the trim function, and make sure that checkbox is checked. And it should, by default, be checked. If you have it unchecked, this is something else I found about Vectric. If you uncheck that checkbox and you uncheck it multiple times, Vectric is going to finally say, oh, they don't want that checked. And then they'll start defaulting it unchecked. And then you're going to want it checked. And you'll have to do that multiple times until it defaults back to having it checked. So we're going to come up and I'm going to trim that upper corner. It really doesn't matter. We're just going to work our way through. I'm going to first trim this part of the arc there, then the corner there. I'm going to trim inside the arc, the part of the corner. I'm going to trim that, and I'm going to trim that. And now we have our basic shape. So I'm going to close this. Now, we're setting ourselves up for this pocket, and we're going to use something called drive rails. I want to show you something with this pocket. I'm going to rotate that pocket, and you can see that the pocket has a slanted wall, and that slanted wall works all the way around. You can also see it's radiused at the top, so it makes a smooth transition in. It tapers in, and then it radiuses into the flat. And I'm doing that by virtue of using something called drive rails, and it's such a cool tool. It's doing it with a molding toolpath, but that takes some thought to do. And what I'm about to do now is something we're going to have to remember. I got to come back to this. I'm going to rotate this around. And you notice here, we've got a radius. I'm going to switch to the 2D view of this project, and we've got a radius here. So when we put this radius into this pocket, we are going to have to remember that radius when we build up our drive rail. And I'll get back to that one in just a moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try a 0.75 radius. So we're going to just go back into our fillet tool. That's under Edit Objects. And we're going to make this radius 0.75. And I'm going to click all four corners and see how this little pocket looks. And I think I can go with that. Yeah, we'll stay with that. All right, so we've got that. I'm going to save the project again by hitting the little save button. And now we need to work on our card slots. Here's something that I want you to see at the card slots. See how the slots kind of go at an angle. They're kind of following this pattern of a kind of a wedge shape between the two, coming down that way, and then it comes back up that way. It looks pretty consistent. So that's why we drew this construction line right here. And this is where you're going to learn another really cool way to do things and another tool. We're going to work at the rotate function, but you're going to learn something about this rotate function that's very cool. I'm going to check to see if there's any questions going on, and I don't see any questions. So, okay, let's keep on going. I'm going to use this line that I have drawn like that to trim these card slots according to the way I want to trim them. For example, right now you can see that the 3D model obviously is interfering with the slots. That one is, and that one is. Now, these 3D models aren't necessarily placed where I want them yet. We'll get them there. That's going to be kind of the final adjustment. I may make the models a little bit smaller. But let's talk about this rotate function. I'm going to swing this line up around an arc so that it crosses over here in the these other arcs here, so I can trim them away where I want to trim them. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to click on that line, and I want you to pay attention here. I'm going to click the letter R on the keyboard. And what that's going to do is that's going to open up the rotate function. Now you're going to notice right in the middle of that line, there's a little donut. That donut is the center of rotation right now. So we have those handles on the outside of the line that always get put there, and you got the little blue handles on the four corners. And I hover over that, I can rotate, and you can see there's a little plus right in the middle of that line. That is the center of rotation where that donut is. So now I'm going to let that go, and I hit Control Z so it's back in position. Now, you notice now that donut is gone. When we go into the rotate function, we have this anchor point box again that you see often, and is selected right in the middle. Now what that is telling us is our center of rotation right now is the middle of the bounding box. So that bounding box is the white, the theoretical box that's drawn through all the white four corners. Now, the donut's gone just because Vectric took it away for some reason. If I go into this anchor point and I move it to, we'll say, the lower left corner, you're going to see the donut show up at the lower left corner. So I'm going to click that, and now that donut has now shown up there. And now our center of rotation is going to be around that plus. You can see the plus sign there. That's the center of rotation. Now we're going to hit Control Z to undo that. And one of the things you're going to notice is we selected the lower left corner of the anchor point, but it's not selected there now. It is now selected up and use coordinates. This is how we can define wherever we want our center of rotation to be. If I want the center of rotation, that line, to be right at X0, Y0, right here on the project, then I can click this use coordinates and go set X at 0 and Y at 0. And then I'll, oops, I got to click the line again and put that number in again, X is 0, and click apply. And now there was an angle that was set up in there. You see it rotated, but you can see the center of rotation right now is at the center, and it rotated that line. So I'm going to hit Control Z. I want to change my center of rotation to the bottom of the line, the lower left where it has touched the y-axis, where x is equal to 0. And the way I'm going to do that is picking the lower right anchor point. And now that donut has showed up down there, and all I have to do now is simply rotate that line. Now that this line was, this anchor point is at the theoretical center of the circles that have been created, or these arcs that were created. Now I can swing that line up, and I can start doing some trimming of these card holder slots. So now I've got the line. I'm going to close the card holder slot. No, the mirror function, or the rotate function. And I am going to trim away the top 3 lines. And it looks like we are going to have an issue right here. So rather than make it kind of a straight line going down like I've done on this first one, we're going to stagger it. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to select that line, hit the button R. My rotate point is right here at the lower corner, and I'm going to rotate it up a little more and just pick some number. What I'm looking for is kind of I'm splitting the difference between the top one, the middle one, and the bottom one. And I'm not being super accurate. It's not going to make that much of a difference, but just want to split that difference. I made that line a little bit longer than I wanted to. So there we go. I'm going to do it there. I'm going to close. I'm going to trim those 3 lines, close that, and we're going to rotate it a little bit more. Select that line again, hit R, and rotate that up a bit more. About right there. We're going to close the rotate function, go back into trim function, and get rid of those guys. And now I've got a nice straight, nice little slot kind of formation here. I'm going to turn on rotate function again, and I'm going to rotate that line out of the way. Now I've got a problem here, because how do I manage the other side of this? Well, I can mirror, I can trim, there's lots of different things I can do. I could have mirrored that line if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw a straight line, go to create vectors, grab a polyline. I'm going to let my cursor snap right to the origin line, the X origin line, and hit my left mouse button. Now I've got a line. I'm simply going to draw that line down like that. I'm going to escape, and I'm going to trim away the right side. So I'm going to go to my trim. Here's a little cool technique with the trimming feature. I got to trim away all these lines. Instead of clicking each one of these lines independently, I can hover up here above the lines or below the lines, hold my left mouse button down, and slowly just drag down. I'm holding the left mouse button down. So that's a very quick way of making it go, those lines trim away. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to delete that little segment line that I just drew in the middle. Now I'm going to grab these lines, and we're going to mirror them across the center line. So there's a couple of ways you can mirror. More tools to learn. Let's take a look, see if there's any comments going on, any questions. Got a start question here. Comes from Tim. Can I type in the degree of rotation? Yes, I can. Yes, absolutely. Okay, good question. So let's go back to that. And before I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So I have all these selected. I want you to pay attention to the black dots that are there, because we're going to come back to these black dots in a little bit. I think they're going to be showing up. Well, yeah, we're going to come back to them in a little bit. Okay, so under transform objects, they have the mirror command. You can select that, and then we can mirror about the job center horizontally, which is this top button here, or we can flip it vertically. We want to make sure we tell the software that we are going to flip it based on the center of the job, which is this center line going up and down. So we need this checkbox checked where it says flip about job center. We also need to have the bottom checkbox checked that says create a mirrored copy. And I'm going to show you what that means. If I don't check that checkbox and I tell it to flip horizontally, as you're watching take a look at the current lines that are there that are selected. When I click flip horizontally, they go away and it mirrors new copies on the other side. I'm going to click Control Z, and then I'm going to check that checkbox, create a mirrored copy, and then flip horizontally. And now it has created the other one without deleting that one. The other thing I want to show you real quick, I'm going to Control Z that, and where it says flip about job center, this little checkbox. If we don't have that checked, it's going to flip it around the bounding box center, which is the little dot that's in the middle of the project. So when I uncheck that and I flip horizontal, it's going to create a mirror just like that based on the center of the bounding box. I'm going to hit Control Z. I want to flip about job center, and we're going to do it that way. Okay, so now what we have is we have 2 lines that essentially make up an arc. And we have to join these lines. So we're going to learn another tool. I'm going to close that command. And so when you join vectors, you can only select 2 vectors at a time. And it has to be an open vector in order for you to be able to join it. So I'm going to select both of those vectors. And you see that little black dot right in the middle there. And that's the only black dot. I'm going to come down to Edit Objects. And since that's an arc, I'm going to come down to the bottom. All the bottom icons are join functions. So you can, the first one is join open vectors. So if you have just kind of a shape, you need to close it. It's going to join it. You join with a straight line, join with a curve, and join at a some kind of mutual point. We want to join, since it's an arc, we want to join with a smooth curve. So when I click the join with a smooth curve, that black dot's going to go away. And that's telling me now that it's not a independent object. Now you see the black dot showed up right here. That's okay. We're good to go. When I click off of that and then click back on the line, you can now see it's joined. I'm going to do that to the other lines on the outside of the center line. So I'm going to join with a curve, click the next one, join with a curve, join with a curve, join with a curve, and join with a curve. There we go. All right, we got that. Now, what I have to do for this slot is I've actually got to create the endpoints in the slot, little rounded edges on the end of the slot. We're going to go over to this one. We go to the 2D view, and I've got to create this little arc that's right there to connect it to create a closed vector and a nice rounded thing so the router bit can fit into it and do exactly what I want it to do. So before I do that, I want to answer this question about, can I specify the rotation angle? So I'm going to click this this line. I'm going to go into R, and remember, our donut is down at the bottom. That's our center of rotation. And when we look at type of rotation, we have two selections. We have absolute and relative. So relative means from the angle that it's at. So if you say, let's just say this is at minus 45 degrees roughly. And I say I want it to go 10 more degrees from that degrees. That would be relative to the current angle that it's at. So if I typed in 10 and apply, it's going to rotate minus 10 degrees, or not that it's rotating in a positive direction. And when it comes to this type of stuff, your angular positive rotation is actually counterclockwise. So I'm selected on relative. So I'm going to hit Control Z, and let's go to absolute. And I want it to go 10 degrees and apply. And it still kind of went the same. So I'm going to do this a different way so I can show you in a different way. Okay, so we're going to draw a new line right there. And I am going to go to R, and I'm going to move that donut. You can actually grab that donut by hovering over it, holding your left mouse button down, and just move the donut to where you want it to as well. That's another cool little tool. I'm going to bring it all the way down to the end of that line. And so we're going to rotate that line 40, let's go 45 degrees. Okay, when I go 45 degrees, that line is rotated. Technically, this line is now rotated at 45 degrees. If I want to go another 10 degrees, well, I'm going to type in 10 while we're selected on absolute and apply, and you're going to see it now rotated back to 10 degrees. So this is absolute from this Y plane or the X line. Absolute is always referencing that one specific orientation, the start line. If I go to relative, let's go back. I'm going to now say 0 degrees, and it's going to go back to where it is. Now we're going to say 10 degrees while I'm on absolute and apply. And it went 10 degrees. Now I've got 10 degrees in the angle box and I click apply again, it's not going to move because it's already at 10 degrees. But if I go relative, it's going to move 10 degrees relative to where it's at. So I click apply, and it just now shifted another 10 degrees. So that's how you fart with the angle feature. I hope that got into that one pretty good for you. And we can, if you have any questions about what I'm doing, please feel free to jump in and ask the questions as we move along. This is just such a fun project. It's also a pretty intense project. And so I'm really taking a lot of time on this because you're going to learn so many tools on this. Julianne, will you do me a favor and just come online for a minute and let people know where we're at with shipping? I got to go downstairs for 1 second, folks, because I'm going to have to, my furnace is on and it's staying on. It's starting to turn into a furnace here. So Julianne's going to pop on board, and if you have any orders, she can talk to you about our status and orders. So, and you can even, yeah, you can even show them what goes on back there. You got them blurred out, but I'll be right back.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. So, well, we have a nice view of Garrett's couch now. Yep, Wade, you got it. If I had one, I'd be taking one with you. But anyway, so we are actually processing through orders as fast as we possibly can. We've got an extra shipping help. Liberty is actually on her way to a family event, so she had a half day today. We pulled Adam, our media guy, in to help us with shipping and labeling, and making sure that we can making sure we can get everything done and processed. But we've gone from 2,000 orders, knocking it down, having a UPS closure, having weather outside that's currently, coming down that we're making sure is okay to drive in. And so far we've got 672 orders left to go. So we're cramming. We're doing the best we can, but still throwing in all the little extras and personal touches, because we're not going to neglect not going to neglect that. So but yeah, if you're waiting on an order, we're punching them out.
Okay. All right, do me a favor, make a note of 56, roughly timestamp 56, so we can chop this out when we re-edit the video. All right, thank you, Julianne.
You're welcome.
All right, and when I go to screen share here, just please make sure that it's full screen. All right, we are going to get back into this. Let's see, Vectric is a variation of vector design. Yeah, it's all vectors. Can you type in the degree of rotation? Okay, we got that question. Drink, because I asked Julianne to talk to you guys. Come on, Mark. Oh, boy. Good to see you, Mark. Diving into a project. And so, okay. I'm going to go back into that. Julianne, please minimize or eliminate my screen so they can see full screen. Thank you. And we're going to go back into the project. So for those of you who have shown up, we are doing this project right here. I'm walking you through the whole thing. There are different ways I could have done it, but the way I'm doing it is just the way I've kind of worked out. It's quite a complex thing. We're already an hour in, and we have gotten to this point right there. So I was actually shooting a video to do this and realized this video is going to be really, really long. Like another video, the marble maze, how to design a marble maze. I was, my video guy said he had 4.5 hours. He's got it down to 4.5 hours. So we're gonna have to chunk it into part 1, part 2, part 3. Okay, so the next thing I need to do, we're gonna have to make layers on this. We're gonna have to size things up. There's so much to do yet. Okay, let's get let's close up these things so we can create these the rounded areas on the slots so we can actually cut it, because we need a closed vector to do this, the pocket in that. So basically, I can do a couple things. It's kind of a cool little tool. I'm going to select that vector, and I'm going to select that vector. Oops, hold the shift button down when you do that. And we can simply come over to Edit Objects and join vectors with a smooth curve. And when we do that, and there it made a smooth curve, but it's not like a full circle. Another technique you can use on that is you can draw a line. I'm going to get a polyline. I'm snapping to the end there, and then I can draw a circle from the center of that line. May have an issue just because of, there you go. I can close that, and then I can trim that away like that, and then I've got a nice rounded thing there. Control Z, undo that. But for all intents and purposes, I don't have to be super exact on this, because when Isabel gets this card holder, She's not going to look at that and say, Uncle Gary, that is not a perfect circle at the very end of that slot, right? When you make projects for people, they're seeing the whole thing. So I'm not going to sweat that one. So we're going to come in here and I'm going to select this one and that one. I'm going to join with an arc or with a smooth curve. We're going to do that one. Oops, Control Z and hit that. And then, oops, I undid that one. I'll do that. And then we'll do it again on the other side. Now, notice I got that one selected. It actually created the arc. I don't need to unselect it. I'm actually made it a little bit harder for myself. So once I did the one, guess what? I can just hit that button again and it will close it on the other end. So I'm going to undo this. Okay, and just like that. And I'm going to, you see this, we don't have a closed end right there. And we don't have a closed end on the other side as well. So I'm just going to select that line, and we're going to join with a smooth curve. It made the smooth curve on that side, and I'm simply going to hit the button again, and it made the smooth curve on that side. So now I'm going to select this one and that one and hit that button twice. Just click, click, and now we got it there. And then I can do the same thing over here. Click, click. And I've just closed those vectors. I can click that as closed vectors. So those guys are done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to segment this out into layers. So right now we've got several different, I still got to put the text in there too. So I want you to just see when you organize your drawings, it's really important to organize them so you can work with them and you don't get confused on things, especially something like this that's going to have, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tool paths in order to get this one taken care of. So what I want to do is I want to segment out into layers, the cutout shape, the slots, the pocket, the text, and the 3D stuff. So now we're going to go ahead and get ourselves organized, set up, cleaned up, and get everything out of the way when we don't need it. And I love working with layers. But first, before I dive into that, I am going to check on any questions. And I didn't catch where he took a drink as he came back. Yeah. Well, everybody has to drink. See, when I ask Julianne to do something, we all have to take a drink. That's just the way it is. Or Liberty, right? Okay, so we are going to do the text. Let's take care of the text first. So I'm going to go into the text under Create Vectors, the big fat letter A, and I'm going to type in the text that I want. Now I'm just going to click somewhere in here. It doesn't really matter. And you can see we got this text box here. What I would recommend on the text box, you see that little green thing right down at the bottom. What that green thing is telling me is that I am center justified as I type this in. So I can go into the text box over into left and I can start typing and it's going to spread itself evenly left and right. If and the justification is selected over in the text alignment. So you can justify right, you can justify left, or you can justify center. I almost always go center. Right now, I am not on center of the project, but I'll take care of that later. So I'm going to type in the text that's going to be on here. It's live, laugh, love, and play games. So, and the font that I'm using is called Edwardian script. So it's kind of a cool font. It's got elegance to it. And now I can hover over the little white bead in the middle and I can drag that text around. Now there's going to be a whole bunch of beads in here. But I'm just going to drag it down to where it's going to be, let it snap to the center line roughly and let it go. So Vectric's got some really cool things in here. You're going to notice these heavy black buttons. What are they called? They're handles. They're called handles. There's one at the top in the middle, and there's one at the bottom. What we want to do is we're going to arc this font so it follows the same arc as everything else. So I can do it in a couple of ways, but I'm going to do it the easy way. One of the ways is I can use the text on an arc feature, which is a separate icon selection, or I can grab one of those handles, the top green one or the bottom green one, and I can drag that text up and it will arc in just as wherever I want it to. So because my snaps are turned on, it's going to snap into the certain locations, but I'm just going to eyeball that text. I'm going to close it. And now all I have to do is just cursor it down, right? So I'm using the cursor keys or the arrow keys to cursor that down. And there it is. Live, laugh, love, and play games. Is that text big enough? I might want to make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to click it. I'm out of the text function, by the way. And when I click it and all the handles show up, those green handles are not there because they will only show up when it's in the text function. So I'm going to just upsize this text a little bit, and I'm going to do it using the scaling tool instead of trying to grab these little white handles. I'm going to go into transform objects, second icon from the left, set selected object size. Right now, it's currently 7.5 inches wide. I'm going to make it 7.75 inches wide. And all my settings are still there from the last time we did a scale. So I don't need to worry about that. And I click apply, and the text should have upsized just a little bit, almost not noticeable. Let's go 8 and apply. And there we go. So that's too big. It's going to touch my magnolias. But what I can do now is I can look at my 3D models. I'm going to close that. I do want this text to be of a decent size. And I can look at my 3D models and I can say, okay, they're still a little bit big. I'm going to just reduce the size of the 3D models just by a little bit. By the way, they're not technically 3D models. They are 2.5D reliefs. But we just say 3D because it's a lot easier. I'm going to change the scale on that from 4 inches to maybe 3.8 inches for the magnolia. Just make it a little bit smaller. And then I'll do that for the lily, 3.8, apply. And that just gave me a little more room to work with that. So we've been on board for what? How long now? Geez, hour, 6 minutes. All right, cool. Let's get back into this. All right, now let's create layers. I've got 5 layers I want to create. I got my cutout, I've got my slots, the text, the pocket, and the 3D stuff. And this pocket is a little bit close to the text, I think. So I'm just going to move the pocket down just a little bit, select it, use my arrow key, just nudge it down. I'll nudge the text down too a little bit just to spread things out. Okay, so let's create layers. I need 5 layers. What layers will allow us to do is to turn things on and off. It'll allow us to have cleaner things to work with as we are doing whatever we're doing. So think of layers like pieces of paper stacked up on top. And each piece of paper, you can see through the paper, and each piece of paper has part of the drawing on it. And you can pull those papers out, you can turn them on, you can turn them off, you can pull one to the top so you can draw on that one. That's a layer. So let's make 5 layers. Up in the top, there's this little, these 3 drop downs. The one of them says layer 1. And when you click the word layer 1, this menu shows up. And in it says layer 1, and it's bold. And I want you to notice that layer, that bold for layer 1, and we're going to get back to that in a second. We want 5 layers. So we're going to come down that little button at the bottom. It says add new layer. I'm going to click it 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I've created 5 layers. And you notice the last one that we've created is blue. That means we can edit the name of it, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'm just going to click off in the white space. You notice that layer 5 is bold and the rest of them are not bold. The bold one is the active layer. It's kind of like the layer that's on top that you are actually going to be drawing on. And you know that by looking at the text at the very top where it says layer 5. If I click layer 2, now it's going to say layer 2, and any drawing that we're doing is going to be on layer 2. So we're going to rename these layers. Layer 1, I'm going to work. Layer 1 will be, we're going to do the 3D models first. So the way that this thing is going to be made takes a bit of thought on this. I'm going to reset the preview. And what I have to do is I have to cut the 3D aspects out first. So I can do them first or second. I'm going to set up my first 3 tool paths, which is the 3D roughing tool path. That's going to rough out the 3D models. And then the finished 3D tool path. And then I also have to lower the top surface of this thing so the 3D models are actually there. They're present. And so everything has to kind of start below the surface. So I'm going to preview those tool paths. Those are the visible tool paths. They're visible when I have them checked. So I'm going to use the button Preview Visible Tool Paths. And so there we go. We have to do this kind of recess on here as well. So all that's going to have to be cut away. And that's going to actually create some new layers as well as we move along. So anyway, but this is why I have to do the 3D elements first. And then we can start working with the slots because we're changing the top level. We're going to be carving down below the top surface when we start doing the other elements of this. And that's why this needs to be done first. So when we go back to this, we're going to go into layers. The top layer says layer 1. I'm going to click it once, and I'm going to type in 3D and hit enter. And now that layer is active. The second one I'm going to do are the slots, the card slots. So I'm going to click that one, double click it, and that's going to say card slots. Excuse me. And the third thing I'm going to do, I will probably do the pocket. So I'm going to call it the piece pocket. And then the fourth one is going to be the text. And then the fifth one will be the cutout. And there we're done. Now, I'm also going to change the color of each one of these. This is another one of these really, really cool things that we can do. You see these, first of all, in the layers menu, you got these black dots all the way over to the left. If that black dot is there, that means it's turned on. If you click the black dot, it'll turn it off. For example, right now, everything is drawn on the 3D layer. That was technically layer 1. It was the only layer that existed at the time. So everything was being drawn there. If I click the little black dot, it's going to turn off anything that's on a layer, which is absolutely everything. I'm going to click it now, and everything goes away. If I turn it back on by clicking the black, now a white dot, so it turns black, everything goes back. Now there's that black square next to everything. And this is where you can change the color, the line colors of the layers. So I'm going to leave 3D black. I'm going to click the black on the card slot, and it's going to open up the color palette, and I'm going to change the card slots to red. Then the piece pocket, we'll click that one, and I will change that to this kind of purple color, I think. And then the text, I'm going to change to green, dark green. And then finally the cutout, we will make it a kind of a strong blue. And now we're going to place or move elements to the different layers. And what I like to do when I'm actually moving things to layers is I leave all the layers turned off except for the one that I'm moving things from. So right now, cutout is the active layer because it's the bold one, and it says cutout at the top. Everything was drawn on the 3D layer, so I'm going to click 3D, and that makes that the active layer. It's now bold, and 3D is up top. And now I can just click anywhere to close that menu. Now we're going to move things. I'm going to grab the outside line, and I'm going to right click. Now you do not have to have your mouse right on the line to right click. I can just be right there. I'm just going to open up this menu. So it's right click on the mouse button. And by the way, if you don't have a mouse for your computer to do your design work, get a mouse. Please get a mouse. Please get a mouse. I will link a mouse down below in the description, the one that I use. Otherwise, you're beating yourself up. Okay, that menu is open. We're going to come down to the bottom where it says move to. And then another menu will open up. It says layer, and we want to move that. That's the outer cutout. We're going to just click the word cutout, and you're going to see that line disappear. And no, we didn't, because I didn't turn it off. But you see it turn blue. So I got to turn these off. I forgot to do that. And the way I'm going to do that is by clicking the off buttons for all the other layers. So now we're just on the 3D layer. Now I'm going to select the card slots. And I'm going to right click. I'm going to move to layer. And then we're going to click the word card slot. And now they're gone. And now we're going to go to live, laugh, love, and play games. Select that, right click, move to layer text. That's gone. Now we got the little pocket, right click, move to layer, and that's going to go to piece pocket. Bingo. Now where's everything? All we got to do is turn all the layers back on. So we click the layers menu, click all the dots, and here they come back on, and everything's got its own color, which is so super cool. So this is like a brown orange right there. Almost looks like that. So for the pocket, I'm simply going to change the color to just make it a green. So I can change this stuff anytime I want by clicking that little color palette. And let's get to a brighter green. And there, we just changed the color. All right, so I am going to save the project again. Save all the time. Now I'm going to check for questions. And no questions. How are we doing? You guys learning something? You all learning something on this? A deep dive. So far, we're in 1 hour, 15 minutes and still quite a ways to go on this whole project. Julianne, mark down minute 16, please, or 1 hour, 16 minutes. Okay, no questions going on. Cool. I'm just sitting back enjoying the show. Then let's keep going. Let's get back in here. Okay, so I want to show you something. We are going to be cutting this recess out, right? So we're going to recess this project. The problem here is when we actually recess the project, we are going to have, we're going to be rounding the edges on this, first of all. So if I preview all the toolpaths, we're going to be using 2 rounding bits. Finish that up. I'm going to be using the 1/4 inch rounding bit for the outer edge. I'm going to use the 1/8 inch rounding bit around the slots. So we're going to have to take that into account as well. So I'm going to use the rounding bit before I actually do the cutout. So in order to make clearance for the rounding bit, I actually have to cut that pocket out, reset, set my 3 toolpaths, and preview visible toolpaths. So I have to make this big cutout actually bigger. I just want to, it's just going to clear it all out quite a ways so that the rounding bit can come in and do its work, and then the finished cutout tool can come out. This is going to take 6 different router bits, I believe, in order to get this project done. And I got to fix that there, but that's okay. That's because I didn't have the toolpath selected. We'll clean that up. Preview visible toolpath. There, that looks much better. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the cutout layer. And I click that, and now it says cutout up on top. I'm going to select that line, and I'm going to offset that line by maybe 0.75 to the outside, right? Because I want it to be on the outside, because I want to move material out of the way so when that rounding tool comes in, it's not hitting other stuff. I just want it to do stuff where I want it to do it. And so there we have it. And it's made that, and you notice that came off the edge. Doesn't really matter. I'm not worried about it coming off the edge because I am going to be screwing down the piece of material. So I'm using this big hunk of piece of ash, very heavy. I've already machined it flat on the alt mill CNC router. And I'm just going to screw it down to the table. So I'll drill 4 holes, one here, one here, one here, and one here. Screw it right into the spoil board. That's the most secure way that you can actually secure a project to your machine. You can screw it down, you can vacuum table down, double-sided tape, CA glue, clamps, but screwing it down with fasteners is the most secure way. Okay, all right, let's continue on. You know, the interesting thing about this Vectric that after a while, things kind of click for you. And then the rhyme and the reason of the software starts to make sense. And it's just like, bam, bam, bam. It just clicks. So keep working at it. And eventually you'll know this stuff, right? It'll just like come so natural. But teaching it to people is the different story. So that's why I do what I do, teach slow and explain things. Some people don't like my videos because I deep dive in explanations for that, but I don't make videos for them. I make videos for you. All right, this is so cool. Okay, so now I've got this outer boundary line. So I've got a little issue here. I've two lines that are the same color. I can literally get confused on this if I don't kind of keep tabs in my head on what I'm doing. So this inner blue line is technically the cutout line. This upper line, or the outside line, is actually kind of a clearance line. This clearance line needs to be on the 3D model layer because it's going to be it's going to work with the 3D models. So we're going to go to cutout, and I'm going to click that, right click it, and I'm going to move it to layer 3D. And so now that line is black. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a look at things. And I see that everything is looking good. Now, this is where it gets even more complex. And some of the thinking that you have to do in this stuff is I'm going to be using the roundover bits for the pointed roundover bits from IDC Woodcraft. So when you have a pointed bit, it can actually leave a little bit of a mark around the edge of the project. The bits from IDC Woodcraft do not have a flat on the pointed roundover bits. And I guess I should probably show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go to the IDC Woodcraft website, and I am going to bring that up so I can show you pointed roundover bits, RB-14, and bring that up. So when we get a close look at it, you can see that the roundover bit comes to a point. And so that little point is actually going to leave a little mark around the project. So we have to offset this bit just a little bit. And so the way I'm going to do that, I'm not sharing my screen on. Oh yeah, I am. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create another layer for roundover. So we're going to come up here. We're going to add a new layer. We're going to call it round over. And I'll give it a color. I don't have to necessarily change the color of it, but we'll make it like a cyan. Okay. And the roundover needs to, for the 1/4 inch roundover, since this blue line is going to be the cutout, I need to offset that by just a little bit. 0.01 is enough of an offset, and that roundover bit will run on the profile, on the line, but it's going to run on that line. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to offset this. I'm going to offset it by 0.01, and we're going to be offset to the outside. We're on the roundover layer offset, and now you can see it actually created that offset line. Now, for these guys, I'm going to use the 1/8 inch roundover. I need to offset on the inside of them. So I'm going to click them. I'm going to switch over to inwards left offset. I'm going to leave my setting at a 0.01. That'll work. I'm going to offset this one to the inside. There you go. I am going to offset this one to the inside, and I'm going to offset that one to the inside. I'm going to close that. And now you can see I got my offset cyan line, and those are going to be for my roundover bits. That's my offset line. Now I'm going to turn those off for now because I don't need them. I'm going to go back to 3D, and I'm going to turn off the roundover offset lines because I don't want them. Okay, now this is where this gets really cool. And this is where a lot of thinking needs to take place when we're going to start getting into drive rails. So I'm going to switch back and see if there's any questions going on. Yeah, you need to get VCarve if somebody's asking. This is VCarve version 12 that I am using. So at this point, I'm going to work with drive rails, which takes a little bit of practice until you get it. And this is going to create the pocket. And I need to create this pocket design, the kind of the profile of the pocket for the piece pocket. It goes down like that at a radius, and it goes down at an angle, and then it radiuses back flat, just like preview all the toolpaths. I mentioned this before, just like this. I think you can tell in this little piece pocket there, it's got that taper there, it's rounded out. This is so cool. We do this with a molding toolpath, but we have to define the toolpath first, and we have to define that type of shape that we want. So I could turn it into kind of more of a bowl shape or something to that effect. Now, this is where I said we had to remember the radius that I created for this area. What I probably should have done to make a note for myself was actually use text in here so I know. Now, remember, it's 0.75, but we'll be able to tell when we do a drive rail. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to switch over to this layer. We want to switch over to the piece pocket layer. So we come up to layers and click piece pocket. That layer is now active. I'm going to go to text, and I'm simply going to type right there 0.75 R. So I know that that is a 0.75 radius right there. And I'm going to close that. Now, this is where our depth of the project also takes into account. So when we cut the 3D, when we first cut the top surface, reset all the toolpaths, highlight the first 3 toolpaths, and preview the visible toolpaths, I need to know the height that I'm going to cut down, and I'm going to have to set the depth of my 3D models in order to accommodate all this. So we are going to go down. This recess is going to be approximately it'll be 0.15 deep. So that means that if my material is 0.85 thick, that's going to take me down to a 0.7 thick from this surface right there, right? So I got to keep some math in my head as I'm doing this. The good thing is when we run Toolpath, Vectric will tell us if we're cutting through it. But I'm working with math in my head. So let's build out this profile of what this pocket is going to look like and why this 0.75 is so important. So we're going to draw a new line. First of all, I'm going to draw a circle. It's going to be a 0.5 radius of a circle. And then I'm going to draw a line. Close. We're going to draw a line from the top of the circle. This is going to be a reference line. And then I'm going to come down 0.75. And hit, oops, I typed in 0.75 and then I hit enter, and that 0.75 came in. Then we're going to just draw that line back that way. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw another line. And that line is going to start at the center of this. If I had more engineering software, this would be a lot easier. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a tangent line at an angle. So I'm going to draw a line that's going to start right at the center of the arc, and I'm going to come down this way, and I want that line to be at 45 degrees. And if you look at the text right now next to the cursor, it says my angle is 45 degrees minus, which is what I want. So I'm going to click that and go with that. I'm going to hit the escape button. And you'll see what's going on here in just a minute. Now I'm going to create another circle. And that circle is also going to be a 1/4 inch diameter circle. Now we need to move it. So I'm going to use the M button. And now I can hover my cursor over the lower quadrant. My cursor turns into a little plus sign. I'm going to drag that down. It's going to snap to that line. Then I'm going to come over here to this quadrant, the right quadrant. It turns into this target again. I'm going to drag it across, and I'm going to let that see a dashed line showing up. That means I'm dragging it on the horizontal, and I'm going to drag it. Oh, I need to drag it so the center is there. So I'm going to come all the way over till the center intersects with this green line. This is kind of a weird setup. Did I set that up right? I did not. Okay. I'm going to move this other line right there. I'm going to move it so it is roughly tangent. Never mind. Not that line. Close. Sorry, my bad. I'm going to select that circle, and I'm going to hit the move, and I'm going to go to this quadrant. I'm going to drag it over there. That's still not doing it right. I'll show you what I'm working to create. And I just forgot how to create this, but I will get it. So I'm going to go to my 2D view, and I am effectively drawing this shape right there. See that little arc right there? It comes down, goes over like that, and goes over. That is my drive rail shape that it's going to make. So let's get back in here and get this right, Garrett. So I want this line to basically connect right there. Oh, I can construct this in a different way. So we're going to Control Z, put everything back to where it was. I think I'm doing it the hard way. And if somebody has an idea how to do this better, let me know. I'm going to draw a line. That's going to be 45 degrees like that, upward. And now I can grab that line, hit the letter M to move, and I'm going to drag that line right up to that intersection point. Bingo, got it. Okay, and I need to get this one doing the same thing here. Now, I don't need that circle at the bottom. What I'm going to do is I am going to now use the trim function, and I'm going to start getting rid of things. I'm going to get rid of that line, and up there, I'm going to trim that, and I need to get rid of that line, and I need to break this one up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the nodes, because if I try to cut this line, it's going to erase the entire line. So I'm going to select that line. I'm going to hit the letter N, and it brings up the nodes. I'm going to hover over this node right there because I want to break the line at that point. So I'll have two separate lines. I'm going to hit the letter C, and what that has done is now separated that line, hit delete, and finally getting better. Okay, now I need to do one more thing here. I got to create another line up here. This is definitely the hard way to do this. I am making this line so that I can trim the rest of the circle away. Bang, like that. And oops, Control Z, get rid of that line. And then down here, I'm just going to put a radius. I'm going to go into fillet. I'm going to make it a 0.25 radius. Click that corner. And there we go. That is my drive rail for this project. Now, unfortunately, that drive rail just made too deep. I just thought about that. So we're just going to select that. I'm going to click it again. It'll cut through the project. And I'm going to grab that upper bead, and I'm just going to shrink it down a little bit. And that may work, may not. Control Z. I got to connect these lines there. So I got to merge the lines with a curve. Click it again. Come on down. Anyway, so there's my drive rail. And I am basically done with this part of the design work. So I'm going to come back over and see if there's any comments, questions. What are you guys thinking so far on this? Are you picking things up? What are you learning on this? I hope I'm not going too fast. Make a note, please, Julianne, at 1 hour, 34 minutes. No questions coming in. Okay. Then we'll just keep on going. Hope I'm explaining stuff to you well enough. Give me a comment. Type in a comment. Let me know. There's not many of you on board. We got about 43 amazing CNC creators on here. And all right. Well, we will keep on going. I will stop at the 2-hour mark. I should be in good shape. Looks great. Okay. Thanks, Lyle. And Mark said to drink again. Come on, Mark's middle of the day, dude. Okay. Let's keep on going. So this is where toolpaths start. So the whole project is designed up, and it actually looks really weird, right? Because it's kind of hard to see how this will turn out. Remember, I've designed this multiple times already. So the first thing I want to do is get everything centered. No, I don't. I was going to actually center this whole mess up with the material, but I don't want to because I've got this reference line right there that I don't want to throw things off that reference line unless I got to do something different. So we're going to save the project again, and we're going to go over and start creating toolpaths. That's the fun part, the thing we all like. Okay. There is one more thing I need to add in here. So we're going to come back and I got to explain this to you. So we're going to carve out the 3D models with a taper ball nose end mill. We're going to be cutting away all the other material. Let me go over to this guy here. And let me preview the toolpaths. So we're going to be cutting all this material away. We're going to use the taper ball nose around the 3D models. And then we're going to clear the material away using a 1/4-inch upcut end mill. Now, you know that upcut end mills cause tear out, but that doesn't matter here. I want to take advantage. It doesn't matter because we are clearing material away. The cutout of the project technically starts at this surface here, not at the top. I'm also using a 1/4-inch upcut end mill because it has the bottom cutter. It's going to make the cut nice and smooth. Now, here's where I run into a problem with using a 1/4-inch bit on a model like that, like this, is that bit. Let's get over to the model. Let's go over to the other drawing. That 1/4-inch bit is not going to get into little corners like this. So I have to create a boundary that I'm going to carve around using the taper ball nose that's going to carve big enough so that the 1/4-inch bit will be able to get into these areas and clean these little corners out like that. Basically, I'm going to set it up so the taper ball nose gets that. And then the 1/4-inch bit will get what it needs. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to switch back to layer 3D. By opening the layer menu, clicking 3D, and now it's active. It says layer 3D on top. We're going to click this, the magnolia, and I am going to come down and V-carve 12. Down at the bottom, you have 3D modeling tools. The first icon is a box, and it's got a little red line around the top of the box. What that's going to do is create a vector around the model itself. Now, if you have a version that's under 12, then we're going to have to go to the tab that is the clip art tab, or I can't remember. Mark, what's the tab they go to in version 11 where they can get to the create a boundary around the vector? So anyway, okay. In the meantime, he'll put it in the comments. We are going to click the button, create vector boundary around the selected objects. And I want you to watch really, we're going to zoom way into this magnolia, and I'm going to click that. And now you see it has just drawn a line in there. I'm going to click off of that. And you can see that line that goes all the way around that magnolia. And I'm going to do the same thing over on the lily. I'm going to click that and I create the vector. Now what I want to do is I am going to select that vector, and you can see it's a solid purple. And what that means is that vector is a grouped vector. It has made several vectors in here. They're inside these areas here, this area here, that area here. I don't want that grouped. What that's going to cause an issue with the 3D carving that I don't want. And I actually created a live video with our brother Roger that explains about that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ungroup this vector. So I'm going to just come in while it's selected, right click and click ungroup. And then I'm going to select the second item that says ungroup onto the groups layer. So now I click that, and now these turned into dashed lines. And I don't need to do that to the other vector because there's no vectors on the inside. Now, what I want to do is offset this. So that vector is selected. I'm going to go to offset. We're going to click outside right, and I'm going to select half the distance of a 1/4 inch end mill. So it's going to be 0.125. And doesn't matter what we have checked here, as long as we're going to the outside right. I'm going to click offset, and now it has created new vectors, and this should be good. The 1/4 inch end mill should be able to take care of this. I'm going to do the same thing over on this one. I'm going to click that vector that has been created. Where can you see it? There it is, right there. And I'm going to offset that one as well, and now that one is offset. So now when I carve this with the taper ball nose end mill, it'll carve out far enough that the 1/4 inch end mill will be able to get into all those little nooks. It won't need to get into the nooks and crannies. There's plenty of room for it to clear all the material up. I'm going to come back over and see if there's any questions. I think Garrett is using Wi-Fi instead of... No, Mark, I am. It's just my... I apologize that it's pixelated. It's the internet speed that I have here. So how bad is it pixelated right now? Julianne, how's it looking? Probably should turn on my screen recorder at the same time. How are we looking? I can just bring you up. You don't have to find a way to bring you up. How's it looking? Wait.
I was going to say, I haven't been paying attention. We're going to have to run orders to the post office real quick because the roads are getting bad.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to pop off.
Looks like 480. Okay. All right. Thanks, Julian. All right. Well, I mean, if it's getting pixelated, it's going to be bad for to edit it up as a video. So Wade, you said it's not terrible. I will continue on since we got this. And let's see. Julian looks like 1080. Yeah, well, she's got good, solid, hardcore internet. All right, me, I'm out in the rural area, and so my one option has a upload speed of half of a snail. So unfortunately, that's what I'm dealing with. Okay, well, we're going to keep on rolling. I'm sorry. It's frustrating that it's doing that. I feel bad when it does that. Okay. Well, at this point, what we've created is the entire project, and everything is now ready to carve. So what I'm going to do at this point is I am going to stop. The whole project's done. I'm going to close this menu, and the design is done. We are ready to carve this guy, and I'm going to leave it at that. I need to trade that in for a racing snail. Yeah. Yeah. It's, when I upload a video, it can take 6-7 hours. When I'm down there at the office, we got the highest speed we can get, and the video will go up in, 15 minutes. So anyway, okay. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. You guys got any questions? And by the way, excuse me, was it pixelated throughout the whole thing? Or did it just start to do that? Was it? Oh, you should have told me. Darn it. Okay, well, did you get anything out of it?
It was like that for the live on Wednesday too,
Oh,
except for
okay.
your screen share. So,
All right. Well, I guess we'll be looking into that other service. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, I will recreate this video, and I'll do it again. Consider this a practice run. The V-carve looks good. I was bad. All right. Cool. Well, then tell me, should I continue on? Should I go into the toolpaths? Vectric isn't moving along. Okay. So it's not that bad. Okay. Good. I don't feel so bad now. Should I go into Toolpath? Yes. Continue from Joe. Do I have another yes? Yes, from Patrick. Yes, from Wade. Okay. Are you learning something? What have you learned so far in this? What is was there an aha moment or something? Okay. Mark says to do it too. So does Dale. You can follow it, but I think it's not optimal. Yeah. Okay. We'll keep on going. It's all right. I consider it a practice run for the regular video. All right. Let's switch on over back. Let's do the toolpaths. So, okay. I've saved the project. Control S. We're hitting the save button. So to go back and forth on the toolpath to design, you can hit the F10 and F11 button, right? Is that yeah, F9 and F10? Wait a minute. F12 and F11. So F11 will switch to the design. F12 will switch to the toolpath. All right. This is where it gets fun. One thing I got to do is I've got to, if you remember earlier on, I was talking about the thickness of the 3D models. And so what I need to do is actually take a look at that real quick, because I know that I'm going to shave down about probably, well, I'm going to set the 3D models at a 0.15 and we'll see how they look. What that means is that the shape height of the 3D models will be 0.15 inches, and then they are going to be dropped down maybe 0.16. I want to make sure that the 3D models are below the surface, so it just doesn't miss doing the surface of the model. So I don't want a flat on the top. So before I do any more, I'm going to go up in the upper left of the screen. There are these two white tabs, and one is split in the middle horizontally, the other one's split in the middle vertically. So the split is how you can look at both this screen, which is the design screen, and the 3D modeling screen at the same time, or the toolpath screen. All right, so I'm going to click that, and now we've split things. And I want to zoom into the Magnolia, and I'm going to just move up and click the Magnolia and click it again. Actually, I can just do it this way, I believe. Yeah. So the Magnolia, there's going to be these white buttons that show up down below. The first white button is the overall height, the shape height of the entire model. The second button is like the height of the top of the model, so where the zero plane is. So assuming there's a zero plane through the middle, that's what I'm taking it as. And then finally, the third one is the base height. Now I'm going to show you what these things do. I'm going to click the base height, which is the third white button, and click that, and you can see this little edit button comes in where you can change the number. So it's 0 right now. I'm going to change it to 1 and hit enter, and now you can see it actually made the base of the model 1 inch thick. I don't want that. I want it to be 0. So, oops, I got to click back into that. Wait, I got to double click that model again. There it is. Click that, and I'm going to change that back to 0 and hit enter. Then the other one is the height of the shape, and then the last one is the overall height. Now I'm going to just change the overall height to 0.15. And I know it's hard to see on the screen right now, but that's what it is. And so what I just did, I hit enter, and now the thickness of this model is 0.15. Now we're going to go over to the other one, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to I hit the little toggle button right here, and I click the top, and what I did is rotate the thing. I want to actually rotate it, so I'm holding my left mouse button down while I'm holding a little toggle block in the upper left of the screen where it says top, and now you can see the front. I'm going to select that 3D model. I'm going to hover over that shape height. Right now it's 0.14, and I'm going to click that, and I'm going to change it to 0.15 and hit enter. So now I know the thickness of my models. I know they're both the same thickness, and now I can start working on my toolpath. All right, so here's what we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is actually carve the 3D models. And I want to get this centered up, first of all. Okay, and we're just going to look at the top. I'm going to click out. We're going to carve the 3D models using a boundary line or boundary vector. Now, I've talked in this video that I did with my friend Roger, I talked about the vectors, but this is why I created these offset lines right here on this model and that model, right? Because we're going to carve up to those with the roughing and the taper ball nose. Now, in this case, we wouldn't normally need the roughing tool on this because it's a very thin carve. As far as the 3D model, I can just go straight into the taper ball nose. But if you are working with a thicker 3D carve, then you may need to rough material out. And so these two bottom icons are your 3D modeling, your 3D carving toolpaths, right? And remember, 3D, these are not technically 3D models. They are 2D, 2.5D relief models. Okay, so the first one to the left is your roughing toolpath around the models. And first thing that's going to come up is it's going to ask for thickness, and the thickness is the material thickness. Right now, it's got the datum information. We don't need that. What I do want is when it comes to this brown box here, right now, the model, it's asking me for a gap above the material. I want my gap above to be 0.1. And you notice that everything just changed. So what happened is the material is going to shave off 0.1 before the model even starts, before it starts carving it. And it has model thickness 0.157. I'm not sure. I've not messed with the model thickness because we already set the model thickness on this. But this is the setting that I want. I want that 0.1 gap above material, and we set the model thickness to 0.15. So that means that the model is going to carve down. It's going to carve down from the top of the material to 0.16, and it will carve the models when it does that. I'm going to click OK and wait for this thing to do what it needs to do. Now we're in a toolpath, and I'm going to select the Badger. That is the roughing tool, the 1/8 roughing tool from IDC Woodcraft. Let's see if I can go find that Badger. It does some finer cutting. There it is. So if you know the Beast, well, the Badger is a 1/8 version of the Beast. So we'll link that down below in the description of the video too. All right, so I'm using that, and where it says machining limit boundary. So the boundary can be the actual model boundary, which is technically this area right here, all these like staggered lines. That's the boundary of the model. That's the model boundary. There's a material boundary, and that material boundary would be the outlines of the material itself. And then there's the selected vectors. So we're going to choose selected vectors, and that was the offset that I made here. So I'm going to select that outer vector I made that was 1/8 of an inch off of the boundary of the model. And I'm going to select that one, and I'm going to select that one. And I'm going to use boundary offset. I'm not going to use that number. I'm going to leave it at 0. Machining allowance, I'm going to do a 0.02. That's basically how much material is going to leave over the finished model. So it's not going to be much, 0.02. I'm going to use a 3D raster toolpath as opposed to a Z level. And the 3D raster is kind of roughing out the 3D shape of it. And I'm going to name the toolpath. It's going to be 3D rough. It's already named, so I already know it's 3D, so I'm going to calculate that. And when we run that toolpath, we're going to preview it. And there we go. We've got our rough toolpath there. And it looks like it's going a little bit deeper than I want, so I'd probably offset that depth a little bit. I want to take a look at something here. What is Z0? So Z0 is the, I guess I'll just use this. Let's just pretend this little box is a piece of wood. So we have set, in that project, we have our XY origin set at the middle. So in the drawing, there's a line there and there's a line there right in the middle. That's the XY0, where they cross, or the origin point. The Z0 point, well, first of all, the origin point is where we set our router bit. Since the whole design is referencing from that origin point on the X and Y, so that's right and left, back and front. It also needs to know the Z value. Z is the depth of it, right? And so the Z0 point is the other origin point up and down. So the Z0 is, in this case, if I'm setting Z0 off the bottom of the material, the machine, the software needs to know that. So that's what Z0 is. Basically, at the end of the day, when you set up your machine, you write your G code, it's going to reference that G code. And G code is basically, it's basically coordinates. It's telling the machine to move to different coordinates relative to those 0 points. So you have X, Y, 0, and Z0. Where all three of those intersect is the origin for all three axes. Okay. Learning lots. Good. And everything so far. Aha moment for you, Russell. All right, cool. Reference line was new. Yeah. Well, I tell you, I learned that reference line after trial and error. I redesigned this thing about 4 or 5 times because this is one I don't want to mess up. I got a really nice piece of wood. It's a one-shot deal. I do trust myself, but I also know that I need to make a video and make sure the toolpaths were going to work, right? Okay, let's get back into this. All right, so it looks like my models are running a little deep here. And let's go back in to see what's going on. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go up to this set button at the very top under Toolpath. And I think this is where my issue is coming up at. But we'll see. I'm going to come back to this. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do now. Right now, I don't need my slots. I don't need my text. I don't need my pocket in there. I'm going to turn those layers off. I'm just doing 3D right now, so everything else gets turned off. Okay, now we're going to, we've got the roughing done for the 3D models. I'm going to go into the finished toolpath for 3D models, select that. I'm going to use the taper ball nose from IDC Woodcraft, the fine detail taper ball nose. And the SKU number for that is TBN-2. You can always search that on the IDC Woodcraft website. And we are going to select these vectors again, the same ones. I held my shift button down so I could select both vectors. I'm going to do this in a raster toolpath. And by the way, you see how these vectors that it created other vectors inside of this one. This is why I had to ungroup, because I don't want it to mess with these vectors at all. I just want it to cut right through there. So if I don't select the vector, it's going to ignore it and it's just going to run right through it. It's going to pretend it's like not even there. So it'll just clear out the whole thing. 3D raster toolpath. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave the name at 3D finished 1, but I'm going to change the end. It's going to call TBN2. At the end of that name, basically what I just said is I told it what router bit I'm going to be using. I always like to put the router bit in there. I also like to name the toolpath. And then we're going to preview the toolpath. And there it is. It cleaned it up quite nicely. I'm going to turn that color off. So it cleaned it up quite nicely. I'm happy with that. Our depth is definitely off. It's starting down. Let's go back and take a look. I want to see what's going on here. Why is it starting at that depth? Close. Okay, we'll see. We'll come back to it. I got to figure that out, but I don't want to troubleshoot too long. Okay, now I've got to cut out the rest of the material. We come over to this other one. We're going to cut out all this other material down to the base of that 3D model. And I think here is where I'll find out where my problem is at. So now we're going to do a pocket toolpath. And I am going to, the pocket toolpath is the second toolpath. And the pocket will clean out everything inside a vector that I select, but it'll be limited to other vectors I select. So I want it to start there on this outside line, and I want the router bit to stop, before it starts carving away the 3D models. So I select the vectors that were selected before, and that way it'll carve everything. It'll go inside that boundary. It'll clean everything out, but it'll stop at the next closed vector, which is what that vector is around the 3D models. Make sure they're both selected. We're going to go at a depth of 0.16. That's what I want it to do, and that's where I want the 3D models to be at. And we're going to use the upcut and mill, which is already selected here. I'm going to use the raster toolpath, and I have the profile pass. I'm going to do no profile pass. I want to show you the difference, what that does if I pick first or last. And I'm going to give it a name. And we're going to call this the recess. We're going to call it recess. And I'm going to use a upcut UC14. That's what I'm putting in the name. Calculate it. It's asking me to go to Vector Validator. So I'm not going to go to Vector Validator yet. One of the things, when you see this alarm come up, continue anyway. See if there's any real problem with the carve, because most of the time it will carve just fine. If it doesn't carve right, then you go to the Vector Validator. So I'm going to continue anyway and set up the toolpath. And now we're going to preview all toolpaths. And there it is. So you see how it's all ridgy right up here at the corners? That's because I'm using a raster toolpath, and it's not profiling around the project. I don't need to. This is all excess waste material that's way on this outside. So I don't need to spend that extra few minutes to actually go into a profile toolpath, or let's go back into that toolpath, the recess upcut, where it says profile pass, and I selected no profile pass. If I selected first or last, what the tool is going to do is actually going to profile that and actually finish that up. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm recalculating. Anytime I'm on this toolpath now, it is going to give me the Vector Validator. I'm going to continue anyway, and we are going to preview all toolpaths. And now you can see when I did that profile pass in the pocket toolpath, it leaves a nice clean line. So we got to get these 3D models cleaned up. Oh, look at that. There is one area that it did not get into. The 1/4 inch did not get into. So I got to take a look at that and see why. You come over here, And I almost want, it's right in this area right here, I guess. Where is that? Yeah, it's right there. So here's the way I'm going to deal with that. One more time. Oh, no. Okay. I'm going to have to doctor that up. So basically, all I'm going to do is I got to figure out a way to why that isn't cleaning up right in there. I'll come back to that in a minute. So I got to take a look at the amount of time we're running now. So we're at 2 hours. 34 people, just getting started. Okay. All right. Got to troubleshoot the 3D part. I'm going to come back to troubleshooting that in a while because I want to show you this other stuff. So the next thing I need to do is we need to do the card slot. So I'm opening up layers. I'm going to click card slot. And what you're going to notice is card slot is colored red and it's bold. That means it's also written right up here. So the card slot layer is active, but it's not turned on. So we need to turn the card slot layer on by clicking the little button next to it. That'll turn it on. And we need to turn the 3D layer off. So I'm going to click the little button next to the 3D layer. And there we go. So now I'm just simply going to click out into the field here to close that menu and click again. And that will deselect that other thing that was selected on the different layer. So these are the slots. It's actually preview all toolpaths. It is these card slots right there. And so here's how we're going to do this. We're going to do it in 2 different toolpaths. The first toolpath is going to run through the middle of the card slot and it's going to clean it out. And the second toolpath is basically going to do a nice finish pass on it. So the first toolpath is going to be a profile toolpath. And a profile toolpath is where the bit will follow a line. So if I want to profile this line right there, it's going to follow that line and go around it. A pocket means it cuts out the inside of what a closed vector, like a circle or something like that. My first toolpath is going to be following these inner lines here, and it's just going to clean out the material. It'll help avoid chip out and make the final cut kind of nice. Problem is these inner lines are not joined. I just noticed this. See that dot there? I select that line, and that one's not joined with that one. So I need to just join those real quick. So I'm going to click F11. I'm going to change over to design. That's what F11 does. And I am going to come over to edit objects down at the bottom. We're going to join vectors with a smooth curve. I'm going to do it with that one. I'm going to do it with that one. And I'm going to do it with that one. And the reason is the software will actually carve one line and then it'll pull up and they'll go back down and carve the next line. Now I want it to carve the whole line at one time. I'm going to hit F12 to go back over the toolpath menu. We're going to go to Profile, Toolpath. We need to select a router bit first of all. And so I'm going to select the 3/16 downcut end mill. And the database here, if you don't have a database, you're using Vectric and you haven't populated your database, go to idcwoodcraft.com and at the top menu, it says database downloads. I'm going to hit select. And so now that 3/16 has been selected, I need to select my vectors. It's going to be the line in the middle. And then we need to set our cut depth and our start depth. So our start depth from now on is going to be 0.16 because that's the level we dropped the top down. And then the cut depth for the depth of the card slot, we're going to turn that and we're going to make that 0.5 inches deep. 0.6 inches deep. We'll see what happens with that. I think that's good. And then we need to set this to on the line. There's 3 selections: outside right, inside right, and on. We want it on the line because if it's outside the line, it's going to carve, it's going to mess up. I need it to follow the lines that are selected. And the rest of the settings, I don't really care. I'm using ash. It's a hardwood, so I'm going to add a ramp. And so down at the bottom, there's this little area where it says ramp, lead, order, start at. If you don't see that part in your menu at the very top, there's going to be a little checkbox that says show advanced toolpath options. You want that checked. And we're going to add ramps. So you want the ramp tab selected. Check that checkbox. It says add ramps to toolpath. And I don't really care. We can go to zigzag, smooth, zigzag. Doesn't really matter to me. We need to set the distance. I'm going to set the distance to 0.5, just half of an inch. It'll take a half inch to ramp in. And I'm going to name that toolpath slot 1. And it's a DC 316. I name the toolpath so I know what that toolpath is doing. And I put the router bit in there so I know what router bit I'm using. Calculate. And now I'll show you what that toolpath does. We're going to preview that toolpath. And now what it did was just run general slots all the way down. Now we're going to clean that up by doing a profile toolpath. And this will run pretty quick. We're going to use the 3/16 end mill. So I've got, first of all, I got to set my depth, 0.16. Let's work from the top down. The depth of it's going to be 0.6. The tool is not going to be what's in here right now. We're going to remove that, hit select, and we're going to get the 3/16 downcut end mill. We're going to use the same end mill. And now we need to select the outside vectors. There we go. And now what this is going to do is, you know what? I'm going to do a profile. Okay, close that. What I need to do is a profile toolpath for this too. So that was my bad. So I'm going to go over to the slot toolpath that I just created. And I am going to right click it and I'm going to duplicate that toolpath. So now I've got a new toolpath called slot 1 and it has a 1 after it. So I'm going to rename that to slot finish. First one should probably be slot rough. And I'm just going to eliminate so now it says slot finish. I'm going to double click that slot finish one. Now we're going to select the other vectors, 1, 2, and 3. And this, the depth is all the same. When we're duplicating it, so it's going to hold all the same data. We duplicated it from the previous one, but we do have to make one change, and that is for the machine vectors. We're going to do inside right. Now it's going to cut inside the slots. The name is already created. All we have to do now is just calculate. We can leave the ramps there. I'll leave ramps there. I'm going to calculate and just get up a little close to it so you can see what it's going to do. You can see that it is actually going to come in, and I got 2 blue lines next to each other, which means it's going to do its stuff that way. We're going to show you what this will do. I'm going to preview all toolpaths. Uh-oh, let's stop that. I need to preview the visible toolpath. Here we go. There we go. And you can see now the router bit is actually cleaning things out. It's kind of cool watching that, isn't it? Here you go. That's what it's going to do. So, all right. So we've got that much done. Now I'm going to hit Control S again. I need to save this. I need to save the project again. I got to get out of the toolpath. Now I'm going to hit Control S. There we go. I want to see if there's any questions. Well, I know he has a few options now. Alt mill most likely. Let's see what questions are going on here. What machine is going to be cutting this? Yes, this will be the alt mill. Definitely the alt mill. And yeah, it's going to be, I'm going to be running the 3D carves at a pretty high speed. I'm going to run them at like 300 inches per minute. Alt mill is supposed to be really good for 3D modeling. So we're going to see what happens with that. How long I've been running? 2 hours and 14 minutes. Okay. Let's see. Sean said, used my tips and tricks for 3 years ago and help reduce some static issues on your long mill. Oh, good. Okay. All right. Shall I continue? We've been hanging out for a while. This is a long live video. Really long. Just found out about the live. Yeah. Oh, Oz, I put this live out 10 minutes before I launched, right? I've been running through a project. So we need to go back into that project. My throat is certainly getting scratchy, folks. What I am doing is I am designing up this project right here. It's a card holder for my niece, Isabel. And so I was going to do a video on it. And the video is definitely, it's a long video to go talk through all this stuff. Okay, let's get into it. So I do have a correction I got to make on this, but I'm not going to work on that one yet. We've got several toolpaths done. I'm going to preview what we've got done. So we've got the card slots. We've got the recess, have the 3D models, and I've got this height issue I got to fix on the 3D model. So I will get that later on. What we want to do now is the live, love, laugh text. So that's a V-carve. So we go to the V-carving engraving toolpath. That's the button that looks like a V. And we're going to click that, and our start depth again, 0.16. And make sure the flat depth is turned off on this with the thin text like that. First, we got to turn that layer on. So we're going to come over to layers. I'm going to turn card slot off, and I'm going to turn text on. There we go. And we're going to pick out our V-bit. So I'm going to use the SV60. So it's the ultra clean cutting 60-degree V-bit, which is, let me bring that up, let me get to my search bar, SV-60. It's going to be that one right there, that bit. That's probably my most common bit for most of my smaller letter carves. All right, very easy. The bit is already selected. Make sure use clearance tools is unchecked. Select the text. Give it a name. We're going to call it text. SV60, since I know what that is, we're going to calculate that out. We're going to preview the toolpath. And there it is. We got the text. Now we get to the fun stuff, the drive rail stuff. Okay. This is a little more complex to be working with, the drive rails. So the drive rail is done with a molding toolpath. And the molding toolpath is this guy right there. It says molding toolpath when you hover over it. So first of all, before we do that, we're going to do the molding toolpath on this pocket right there. And so what it's going to do, it's going to give us that kind of taper in sound that it rolls over, goes down on a taper and rolls back out into the bottom. So let's get into that. And I've got to turn the card slot layer off, text layer off. I got to activate this card slot layer is active right now. We're going to do the piece pocket. We're going to turn that on. So we've got the pocket itself, and we've got the thing right up here, the shape that it's going to be. So we're going to flip this over to the top. I'm going to grab that vector, and I really want to get it down over here so we can work that way. Now, with the drive rail, with the molding toolpath, you cannot do it with a closed vector. You have to have an open vector. So we got to split this thing into two different vectors. So I'm going to go back to the design screen. Oops, sorry, 2D view. And I'm going to go to design. There we go. Because I got to split this. I actually don't have to do it in design. So it's got to be 2 separate open vectors. So I'm selecting it. I'm going to go to node, and I'm going to hover over one of these nodes. To the left, I'm going to hit the letter C. That just cut the vector, and I'm going to do it the same on the right, letter C. And now we have 2 vectors, the upper one and the lower one. We have to do this. This is such a cool toolpath, but you always have to have that open vector in order to do it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to open up the molding toolpath. And let's see. So gap above toolpath is going to be 0.16. So that's this little box right here, right at the top in the menu. And now we're going to select our router bit. I am going to use the upcut 1/4 inch ball nose end mill. And what this is going to do, it's going to step over and just slowly cut out some of this material. Now we might have to rough cut some of this material out first, but I can select some of the other items in here, 1/4 inch ball nose and bonus boundary offset. Yeah, I might have to rough some of this out. Anyway, so what we do is we're going to select the lines that are going to be carved, which is the one I have selected and the second one I've selected. And all of a sudden, all the stuff comes up. And then we're going to select the final line, which is this shape. When I click that, now everything has changed. We've got all these weird lines here. So what's going to happen is the router bit is going to carve inward or in the direction that these lines are sticking out, these prongs. So this line on the bottom is sticking out. It's going to carve really funny. I'm going to show you. I'm actually going to calculate this out. And we are going to, well, I'm going to calculate that. And you're going to see how weird it's going to cut it. So you can see the toolpath there. And if we actually preview the toolpath, it looks really weird. It's totally messed things up. So I'm going to go back into that toolpath, and we're going to right click over the vector that's messed up. Let me select again. Okay, we got to reselect the toolpaths. And, oh, I made a mistake here. Wait a minute, close. Okay, got to go back into that toolpath. Yeah, that's weird. It's like it lost its settings. So I'm going to say 0.16 again. I'm in the molding toolpath, 3. And my gap above material, 0.16. And I'm going to, it's almost like it's not working right here. Calculate. Yeah, so I wasn't able to edit that for some reason. What I can normally do is come into that one there. So it should give me an option to change the direction. And for some reason, it's not doing it. It's not even showing me the stuff I need to see. So I am going to just close that. I'm going to save this, almost like something happened with the software itself. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to close it. And I'm going to come back to the screen with you guys. And I'm going to open it back up. Yeah. So wouldn't 30 be better? Actually, you know what? You're right. I probably should use the 30 on that. Thank you for saying that. I will do it. But it's a good question. So let's see, what's the question? I'm going to relaunch this first real quick so I can, I think the software bugged on me for some reason because it didn't give me the stuff that I needed there. So let it launch. And then I'll answer a question that just came in, which was, so you have to create a section view to get the function to cut it. Yeah. Yeah, that's the way it works. With the molding toolpath, it has to be an open vector. All right. Molding toolpath is really, really cool. All right, let's see if it picked it up now. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go back to that. And boy, that looks funky, doesn't it? We're going to go back into the sweep toolpath. Okay, good. Finally showing it. So I'm going to turn that noise off. Okay. So now I can right click over that one that's going on the outside, and that it says reverse direction. It should enable me to everything to come on the inside like that. And now it's going to calculate out okay, but we got another problem here. This is the actual path that's going to follow. And it's basically going to start at the bottom and work its way out, which is not good. So we need to reverse that toolpath there too. It needs to start at the top. So I'm going to right click over that, click reverse toolpath, and now it will work down into the pocket. Now we calculate. It's going to look so much better. Preview selected toolpath, and there it is. I got to preview all the toolpaths, but this is where the math comes in, which is kind of important. Okay, so you see how funky that looks at the bottom, and that is because the radius is 0.75, and I did not compensate on that radius the way I need to. So when I say radius, the radius of the shape itself, the pocket shape. So I am going to, let's see, I want to go to 2D view, and I'm going to, first of all, exit out of that. And so there's a couple things I can do. One is I might be able to fix this guy right here. And if I got a 0.75 radius around here, I've got to keep everything relative to 0.75. So from the very top start of this molding path to the very bottom where the arc flattens out, it needs to be 0.75. If it's more or less, it's going to mess up the carve in what we're doing. So I'm going to actually check the distance by doing a horizontal check. Where's that node point? Right there. Okay, we're going to measure there, and I'm just going to see what my measurement is. 0.8961. That is the problem. That is why this is doing that. So I did it kind of wrong. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a rectangle that is 0.75 wide by, we'll just do it by 3 tall. It's a little quick fix that I'm making. And I'll put that right there. And I am going to move this rectangle right there. And now all I need to do is go to node. I'm going to get rid of this line that's right here. I'm doing a quick fix here. I'm going to cut that node by hitting C while I'm hovering over it. I'm going to delete that line right there. I'm going to double click this guy. There we go. And click it again. And now I want to squish that in. Actually, I can just scale it. So I'm going to go to the scale tool, and I want to make it 0.75 wide. 0.75 wide. I just changed the width of it. I'm going to close that. I need to now get my line back at the bottom. I'm going to let this ride as it is because I want to show you what's going on, why I need a line at the bottom of this particular vector. So we're going to recalculate. I got to go back in here. I'm going to recalculate this pocket. Calculate. And now you see it didn't finish the whole thing. I'm going to reset the preview all toolpaths, and wait for it to come in, and it didn't cut out the whole thing. And that's because that drive rail, that molding rail, is not long enough. That took me a couple times to figure out, and it's taken me a while to figure out the drive rails. But once you get it, it's actually pretty cool. So I got to go back into drive rail. I got to draw a line. That line can't be too long or too short from the bottom of that thing. I'll just make it roughly 1 inch long. Oops, Control Z. 1 inch long. And that line needs to be connected with the other line. So I'm going to select the other line, and we are going to join with a straight line. Close, switch. Now I'm going to finish this. I'm going to be done because this has gone on for a very long time, and I hope you guys are figuring things out. Gap above toolpath. I'm having to change everything again. 0.16. It did it again. It's messing everything up again, which is really bizarre. So Vectric is doing. I now have to close the program down again and do this again. Anyway, I'm going to do that because I just want to show you what we've created, and then with the pocket, and leave it at that. So we're going to close that, relaunch Vectric. Ask any questions while you can. Well, I can't believe it's 4:30. I've been on since 2. Okay, let me go back over. Wrong toolpath. I gotta edit the sweep profile. There we go. And I have to reselect that line there. And I just want to make sure these lines cross over. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, preview all toolpaths, and it actually went too far. That little line is too long. No, too short. It said lost its settings too. So it's like I gotta go back and do the settings. Anyway, so folks, what I'm going to do is I am going to stop. My throat is kind of chopping up. Can you see why this would be a really, really long video to make on YouTube? Time flies when you're having fun. Welcome to my world. Yeah, thank you for sharing these challenges. Yeah. Hey, you know, this stuff happens, and even having a lot of experience on this, things still go wrong. All right. So anyway, with that, I'm going to check out. It's Mark's longest video is an hour long. Mark, my longest video is an hour and 50 minutes long. I've got several videos that are an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes. And I tell you what, I dread making videos like that. That's why I decided to go live like this, because, well, as you know, editing videos takes a long time. For every minute of video, there's about 10 minutes of editing, 10 to 15 minutes. And that's if you're lucky. So Mark's longest live stream is 3 hours. Oh, geez. Now I got to stay on for another 30 minutes. Go cook a nice steak. Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm going to go out to dinner tonight. It's been kind of busy. Take Sarah out to dinner. All right, folks. Excuse me. I didn't think I was going to last this long with my throat like it is. Okay. Well, I'm going to check out, and just put in the comments. What did you pick up? Anything you learned? Yeah, what did you learn? Use the demo bleeding edge software to very large international company. I love life. Awesome video. Okay, yeah. I learned a lot. Thank you. I need to switch from easel. No comment, Sean. You'll be happy. You'll be happy that you did. All right, folks. I'm going to check out, and if you're going to switch to easel, send me a message. I'll give you. If you're going to switch from easel, send me a message. I'll give you a link, and we'll talk to y'all later. Have a great day.